Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the first ever Kinnelon Public School Security Forum. I'm Vinny Shivas. I am the Supervisor of Special Projects, and one of my main responsibilities is safety and security for the district, and that's why we're here tonight to talk about that. So, just a little bit about myself. This is my 23rd year in education. 18 of them have been here in Kinnelon. All but this year I've been at Kinnelon High School. I started out as a math teacher for the first half, I guess you'd say 9 or so years, then about 9 more years as vice principal. And then I took this position where, again, one of my main focuses is safety and security for the district. Moving on, I'm going to explain what we've done in the past, what we're doing currently, and what we plan to do in the future for safety and security. And being that we're just about to enter the holiday season, I'm going to bring it up, talk to it like Dickens' classic Christmas Carol. They had the Ghost of Christmas Past, Christmas Present, Christmas Future. We're going to have security of Kinnelon Past, security of Kinnelon Present, and security of Kinnelon Future. So bear with me as we get into the spirit. So in the past, we've dealt heavily with procedures. We tried to add more procedures. We tried to do it more often, and we tried to make them more efficient and more effective with our students and staff so that if any emergency did come up, we knew what we were doing without question. We also developed emergency plans for unstructured time. This is more geared towards PRM and the high school, where students are moving about the building and they have changing time, they have lunch time, where you're not around as many supervisors and teachers, if you will, so they're not sure where to go. So we developed those procedures so they know where to go. We've actually drilled it this year already, which was a huge benefit. So if that does come up, they know what to do in those situations. We've installed internal signage in the past to all rooms so they know, identify room numbers fairly quickly, and also what to do if you're in a bathroom in case of an emergency. So the stalls are all aligned with directions depending on the emergency, what to do and how you should respond if there is no adults with you. We changed the traffic pattern last year here at KHS. And the point of that was to try to keep less cars out of the senior parking lot, as we have seniors driving in there, new drivers, and we have students crossing the road to get to the school. So it prevents accidents from happening. It also makes it a little more effective driving down from the Keel Ave, dropping off at the cafeteria, and then leaving. So we have multiple doors that are being supervised at all times, in which students are getting dropped off by parents, and another door in which all students are getting dropped off by the bus. We introduced lanyards to the staff a few years back. That was so that students could easily identify who is supposed to be in the building and who's not. If they had a question or an issue or needed to talk to an adult, they could easily identify who it is. And we checked the PA system for dead spots. It's something that a lot of schools tend to overlook, as I was told at some of the webinars I attend. And we just played music, walked around the building, and tried to see where the speakers reached and where they didn't reach, and we tried to address it. Most of them were addressed, but now it's starting to filter through. We're finding a few more popping up here and there, so we got to get back on that. Moving on to security of Kinnelon's present. One of the seminars I attended, they mentioned that at Virginia Tech, the shooter zip-tied or chained double door handles so no one could get out. So he essentially locked himself onto the floor with his victims. So to prevent that, we were instructed by the state, who came in and did a little audit of us, to remove those double door handles, remove one of them. So the door is still functional from the inside. You can push your way out, no problem. But from the outside, you have to use one handle. You can always reach through and then pop the door on the other side. So both doors still work, but there's nothing for the double door handle to get tied to. So therefore, you will have access to using that door in case of an emergency. We removed wording from parking lot spaces. So if somebody did have a target, they wouldn't know if the principal's in the building just by looking at his parking spot or her parking spot, or if the nurse is there or a counselor, so to speak. Okay, so it's just straight numbers, straight across the board. It's a little more difficult to identify if someone is there that you may want to cause harm. We also renumbered the parking spots, especially here at the high school. I worked with Officer Caputo, so if you give a number where there's a situation, I can tell you where it is without even going there. He can do the same. Just by the straight numbers. So it expedites his response time without having to look at the map or drive around to find where it is. All right, the other buildings don't have as many different parking locations, so it's really just consecutive. But that was more good at the high school. High school, we got a bunch of teenage drivers. We know teenagers like to push their limits, and we've seen them, pulling out of here a little expeditiously. So we added speed bumps, 2 speed bumps to the back driveway to hopefully slow people down, cause less problems and less accidents. Not that we've had many back there, but making sure everyone's being as safe as possible. We're hoping to add more speed bumps in the future throughout the parking lots and so forth. We have a new visitor management system to all 5 schools this year. All right, this visitor management system checks 3 different databases. The other one, I believe, only checked 1. It's work in progress, to say the least. It's causing us to check a lot of different people because it's matching, but they're going to clean that up as we move forward. And everyone's been working together towards that. So right now, it's causing some headaches, but we're getting there. Better safe than sorry, right? Moving on, the arrival and departures at PRM, Cisco, and Kiel. Those were changed slightly, and their videos were made over the summer. Mr. Buser, Mr. Mongan, myself, Ms. Olawole were in those videos. Again, that was to help expedite drop-off and make sure it's safe as possible by trying to have students get dropped off on the side of the building without having to cross over moving traffic, so forth. A couple weeks back, we introduced RSVP3. This was an initiative by Sheriff Gannon out of Morris County Sheriff's Department. And basically what it is an anonymous reporting tool for students, staff, teachers, even John Q. public, in which if they're aware of any violent act geared towards a school or its student, they can report it anonymously. It's not for HIBs, but it's more for the serious violent acts and mental health issues. So if you have a friend who might be thinking terrible thoughts and you're concerned, you can make the phone call you can use the app for RSVP3. It's been in Mr. Mongan's newsletter and Mr. Suda's newsletter, or you can go online, go on the website, and you can report it anonymously. The tip is reviewed by trained professionals at the Sheriff's Department office. They then forward it on to the local municipality. It is viewed there by trained professionals, and they will act immediately if it's needed, if it's urgent. If it's not, they will pass that information on to the schools, and then the schools can deal with it with their students if need be. So I think that's a pretty valuable tool right there. And this year we introduced KHS and PRM students wearing lanyards. Again, I know it's not a fan favorite of all the students, but at the high school and at the middle school, teachers have 5, maybe 6 classes. They don't have all the students in the student body. So they may not identify a student every time, when they see them. It may be some student that they don't have. So this helps identify that that student belongs there. And it helps tell them that they're a student in the school. The lanyards also do provide some useful activities, such as you can swipe in and out of the building as seniors with their sign out. We're hoping to use it at the library, hoping to use it for lunches, eventually bathrooms, and even attendance in the future. But it's steps, baby steps. Just last week, I got the final versions of electronic mapping. There was a state initiative in which they wanted all schools to have electronic maps available so that if there is an emergency, all first responders can have it. Chief has it in his possession, so if there is an emergency here and you have outsiders coming, outside emergency responders coming, he can send it to them and they can identify where it is in the building immediately. It's not open to the public. CRG was the company that did that. Great to work with, and the maps, like I said, have been finalized. They're in Chief's hands, and that's pretty much done. We're adding video surveillance to Cisco. Being that Cisco's back in use after a decade or so, they don't have any cameras over there. So we're adding cameras starting tomorrow. The company, Mercado, will be out here tomorrow to start the installation of the cameras at the preschool and board office up there, and it should be done in a week or so. We created standard operating procedures for all transportation. So bus drivers now have a clear idea of what to do when they get onto a bus to make sure it's safe, what they're doing when they leave a bus, in case of an accident or a case of an emergency on the bus, if a child gets sick, who to call, when to call, and so forth. So it's clear and it's clean across the board. We have ordered and it's coming in exterior signage for all our playgrounds, our fields, and our entrances at the schools. So basically saying no trespassing, no loitering, no firearms, and that type stuff. So we are identifying locations for them to be hung up, and hopefully they'll be hung up in the next week or 2 around all campuses. The lens system. We installed the lens system in partly installed, I guess, on all of our buildings, but it's been completed in 3 of our buildings. We have 2 more to go to be finalized. And lens is an acronym for Lockdown Emergency Notification System. Basically what it is, it's a push button or a desk phone or cell phone application in which you can call a lockdown situation, and it does it automatically through an automated message over the loudspeaker, so every student in the building is aware of it. It calls KPD with an automated message identifying that the location and that we're in a lockdown situation for them to respond. It takes away the human element from us having to make a phone call, remember codes on phones and whatnot, and to try to sound calm during an emergency situation. So everything is done automatically for us, and it allows us the time to focus on ourselves and our students to get us in safe spots. Also, the system contains strobe lights at the ends of each hallway, so when it's changing time, it's loud. You might not hear the announcement. So you see the strobe lights flashing, it identifies that we're in a lockdown situation. And also in large areas, there are TV monitors that are essentially clocks and announcements system for the schools to use, but when it goes into a lockdown situation, that gets wiped and it says lockdown, 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 and flashes in big red letters. So they're in the gym areas, the cafeterias, and areas like that. This is a big one. Our reunification spot has changed. And I know this has been a talk amongst people around town. I received a bunch of calls on it, and I've dealt with a couple different people about this. And I get the concern. I do understand it. But there's a couple things I want to make sure that everyone's aware of so they can make their judgment accordingly. So this is for extreme situations only. It's not for a power outage or if we ran out of water, we had to evacuate the building for an hour or so. It's for an active shooter. It's for a bomb or a bomb threat, that type of stuff where we may not be around for a while. Okay? So we needed a location that was away from the building or the buildings so that people can do their job. The first responders can get to the site and not get stuck in traffic. We also need an area large enough to fit our district or 4 of 5 of our buildings. So we're talking 1,500 students or so, 1,500 students and staff. We needed a place that was warm, covered, bathrooms, provided water. You don't know how long we'd be there. Hopefully not too long. We looked into over half a dozen other locations other than the one we picked, which is County College of Morris and Randolph. All right, some of the other ones were Morris Knolls High School, was Jacksonville Chapel, was the Armory, was the DPW across the street, Silas Condit Park, and they all had negatives, including CCM, don't get me wrong. But I think that these other locations didn't have the pros that Randolph County College of Morris did, okay? Some of them don't have coverage, some of them don't have bathrooms, some of them don't have water, some of them aren't large enough, some of them didn't supply resources that we would need. And when I go through the next few slides, you'll see that what exactly Randolph does provide. So at County College of Morris, they're going to give us approximately 60 security personnel. They have 20 to 25 of their own. They have an agreement with the county court system that their security at the courthouses, they would shut down courts and give us all their security at the County College of Morris. And there are a few local PD departments that would supply guys. Those 60 officers are trained to deal with irate parents, how to deal with traffic flow, parking, in and out, to help with that. So that's what their job would be to do. They disperse amongst the campus and direct people to where they're going, what buildings they needed to be in, and so forth. County College of Morris would also provide space. They'd offer us 3 buildings. 1 building for students, 1 building for parents, and 1 building for everybody to be reunited in. Okay? They also would shut down classes for the entire day. As soon as they get the call that we're coming, we're in a lockdown, and we're going to be reuniting, they shut down classes, send all the kids off campus. They leave their teaching staff on campus to help in any way, shape, or form. They also give us a custodial staff, which would make sure that we'd have tables, rooms, tissues, bathrooms. If we needed extra space, they would open a folding wall or give us another room in which to do it in. And again, as I said, these security personnel would be supplying us with traffic patterns and so forth. Now, I know the distance is the big downfall here. I've driven it during rush hour traffic. It took me 31 minutes, and I was going west, as anybody come from Kinnelon would. I went through Denville out to Route 10, and went west. 6 of my 31 minutes was spent at the traffic light getting onto Center Grove Road. So if there were an emergency, maybe they have an officer out there to direct traffic and expedite that. I'm not sure. But I did check with Ramapo College. If they do this, they said they do it for one other school and a daycare. They would give us the athletic center, and that was it. I checked with William Patterson. They don't do this with anyone else. So this had basically all the resources laid out for us except for the distance. And it is. It's a little further than the rest, but I think the pros outweigh the cons with it. There are many schools involved in CCMs, reunification. Many schools using it from around the county. All right, I think it's upwards of 20 now. And what that allows us to do is if Mr. Mango were to say we're in a reunification spot going up to CCM, these schools would chip in any resources they can help with, such as how would we get there? We're already short busing here. Well, they would provide 3 or 4 buses. Morris Knowles, they might provide 6 buses. Booton might provide 2 buses, and so forth. So we can get there in one shot without having to send buses on a round trip, 30 minutes each way to get there. They can provide us technology, many computers, laptops for checking in parents and checking out parents. They can supply personnel who might know our computer information system, student information system. They can give us radio technology. They can give us, like I said, transportation. So there's a lot of different things that schools can provide each other to help with this process. And then one point that they made when I was in getting this information was, you can't rely on your staff in an emergent situation like this because they're as much victims as the students. So to think that they're going to be thinking rationally and be able to help students and counsel students and reunite students with parents, they might be able to, but that's not something they want to bank on. So that's where we come in and start helping each other. Now, of the 20 other school districts or so that are involved, Butler's one of them, who's our neighbor. Lincoln Park, who's close to our neighbor. If not, they are. I'm not even sure the border there. Booton Township's a neighbor. They're all going to CCM and using their resources and involved in this whole process. Another thing we did for active shooter response, we were using ALICE, which was an acronym for a run, hide, fight. We're switching to a lockdown situation. Basically, this was best practice from the New Jersey Department of Education, Office of School Preparedness and Emergency Planning. They say it's best practice. They do it. They say that for a couple of reasons. A locked door has never been breached in an active shooter. I'm not saying it couldn't happen. It hasn't happened yet. I spoke with Russ, one of our Class 3 officers. He was a tactical guy for Patterson for many years. He said, Vinny, with these doors, they're 2 inches thick. You have metal frames. They open outward. For someone to get through it, it's going to take them some time. They need a crowbar, and they would have to put down their weapon to do it, to get through it. And even that would take some time. And obviously, that's what we're trying to do, is buy time for an active shooter situation. So, so that's another reason why the door has never been breached. Also, it takes the decision making away from our stress staff. If they're in a situation in which they know there's an active shooter, again, are they going to be able to make a rational decision? I don't know. We don't know until it happens. So rather than having that guesswork, we're taking that guesswork away. Now they can focus on getting to where they need to get to in the room. This allows us to account for all students and staff, so no one's running to the woods and being hidden and out of our site for a couple hours, 2, 3 hours, 4 hours, whatever it takes to track them down. Any rooms that have windows next to their doors, we've blacked it out to prevent sight lines in. We've also blacked out windows indoors that are the length of the door, so that when the blind drops, it actually covers the entire window. It doesn't leave like the bottom half or anything of that nature. So we're trying to think of all avenues to keep this method as safe as possible. And obviously, we identified location in rooms in which students should move to, so they're out of sight lines and they're out of the direct line of the door. All right, moving on to security of Kinnelon's future. We're going to continue to practice our procedures. They're constantly being evaluated, constantly being tweaked, constantly being upgraded to make it more efficient and more effective for all our students and staff to keep us as safe as possible. All right, we need to harden our buildings, our fields, and our play areas for our students when they're outside. We need more video surveillance, especially on our fields and playground areas. We need more transportation of our own. And we need professional development for staff. We constantly train and upgrade our staff's knowledge on every situation. How do we do this? Well, we developed a 5-year plan. One of the main parts of the 5-year plan was a grant that we applied for in April and May of this year Unfortunately, the results came back last week and we did not receive the grant. So we have to move on to a different method to try to get that money and get money to fulfill some of these objectives. So we could tie it into a referendum. We could budget over the course of a couple of years, throwing 2 or 3 things every year at each year's budget to try to whittle it down. And we're also looking into other security grants that are out there to see if we can use some of it to help fund some of these issues. But some of the things we're going to do to harden the buildings, we'd like to add 3M film to all first floor windows in every building. We'd like to add a vestibule or a man trap, if you will, at Cisco. Right now, they don't have that. We would need better window signage at all schools so that any emergency response person coming, they could clearly identify room 106 if that's where they got to go. Right now, we have it marked in small letters that are starting to fade and peel in some cases. These would be bigger and they'd be front to back, so you know exactly where the room started and where the room ended. So you didn't have to guess, is that some sign for the room to the right or to the left of it? I would like to get digital radios so that Stony Brook is not on an island. They can actually communicate with the rest of the district, because right now our radios don't reach that far. We can communicate between the 4 buildings, and even sometimes that's a little bit difficult, but Stony Brook, there's no chance that's happening unless we upgrade our radio system. Our interior classroom doors, I'd like to get rid of the big windows in those doors and get the smaller windows to make it easier, safer for us in lockdown situations. KHS is having struggles with their paging system right now, and we'd like to upgrade that and get that working to 100% of its capabilities. Right now, they're doing a lot of it ringing manually, especially with the time change just happened this past weekend. I would like to get projection signs in the hallways. So if you're using the cameras, you can simply see that door is for room 205. Right now, all our door numbers are flat against the wall and you can't see it. If you're not familiar with it, you're not going to know what room is what. But if these stick out, almost like a hospital, I've seen them in hospitals, they're like triangular that stick off the wall and they have to sign the room number on both sides, whether it's a bathroom, a room number, a closet, an office, whatever it may be. We'd like to add interior accordion gates so we can prevent traffic flow to certain areas of buildings when we have events going on. So, for example, like we have the gate down by the athletic center here, the athletic gyms here. That's closed after 4 o'clock to prevent students that are in the gym area to come through the building, or anybody entering into the gym area to come into the building. I'd like that at more of the schools. Like at Stony Brook, I know they have some events in the gym area, and it's tough to keep people in the gym area because you have 2 or 3 different hallways that venture off. If we can just use a gate there, that would be great. I'd like to add bollards or guardrails throughout the campuses, prevent cars from possibly jumping up a curb and hitting a building or into a student's area. One area would be over by the athletic part of the high school, coming around the circle. I know there's areas over at Stony Brook with Miss Utel that has some safety concerns. If somebody would drive a car, they can get up into that spot, and we use bollards for that. Most of our fields don't have fencing. They just go into the woods. Obviously, that's a concern of ours, and we'd like to put fencing up just to make another obstacle for someone who is trying to enter from the woods to get towards us. We'd like to get video surveillance for all our school fields. Okay, I don't know, like for example, the high school practice field, practice football field, and practice soccer field, that's pretty far away from the building. If we put a camera on the building out there, you're going to see little dots. You're not going to be able to identify much. But if we can get cameras on the far side shining towards the building, same thing with PRM fields on the back side towards the building, you can see a lot more. And obviously people would have to leave towards those cameras if they're going to go into the woods, and you'd be able to identify who it is at that point, hopefully. And those push buttons I spoke about, they're in offices right now, but I'd like to add them around every building like fire alarm pull stations, so that if somebody does see something that's out of the ordinary, they can simply push that button no matter where they are and what floor they're on, and everybody is notified within seconds rather than having to go tell an adult or punch a code in or run to somebody else in the main office and so forth. And a big one here is I'd like to add door sensors. This door sensors would tell us if any door is ajar or if any door is being used that shouldn't be used. So if a student's leaving through a door that should not be used, we would see it, and the camera system would jump right to that door, so we'd see it immediately and we could address it immediately. So every building has a certain number of entrances that are allowed to be used by staff and or students. And if a door is not being used or is being used inappropriately, then we could identify that pretty quickly and address it before that door stays ajar for hours. So these are some of our ideas and some of the directions we're moving. I would like to form a community based security committee team consisting of parents, staff, students, and whoever would like to be involved with that, and sit down, discuss things, ideas, topics, and even possibly do some research and investigation as far as into what would be the best place to do a reunification, what would be the best way to handle this situation or that situation, and so forth. And plus, I know a lot of people in town are in education. A lot of people in town are in law enforcement. So they're seeing it from different perspectives. And that would be a great thing to bounce off of each other and let me hear what's going on there. And it might be useful here. So if you'd like to be a part of that committee, please email me at shivasv@kinnelon.org. Please do it by, I guess we'll call it Christmas, 12/20, close enough. And we'll set something up. And our next security forum meeting will be Leap Day 2024, February 29th. So I thank everybody who's online for coming out. I thank everybody who's here for coming out. Appreciate your time. And if you have any questions, I'll try to answer them at this point.
I have a question.
Sure.
For the lens system,
Mhm.
it's an automated like voice that comes on and just says lockdown, lockdown,
Correct.
lockdown, or something like that, right? So is there anything, again, just sharing from my own experience in another district, like where a staff member say would still have an opportunity to pick up the phone and code in like details or specifics or something like that? Like, do they have the availability
Yes.
to pick up the phone like and make an announcement? Like
Yes.
anybody
So
from any place?
in the school itself, the message is repeated 2, maybe 3 times, and that's so responders can get here and not have to deal with the constant sounds to communicate with each other and so forth. So let's just say that something was going on in the 3rd floor and you're on the 1st floor in the high school, you could get onto the intercom system and page, hey, the actions on the 3rd floor by the library and so forth. So yes, you would be able to do that.
Is that something that you would perhaps train the teachers on or talk to them?
Yeah, they already know that now.
Okay.
They already have that capability now. Now, if we do upgrade the PA system, those directions may change, but they have the capability of paging from the system, any phone system in the building right now. The push buttons are minimal right now. We have 1 in every building, but like I said, I'd like to add at least 2 to every floor, a third of the way in from each edge so that everybody has equal access to it. And you don't got to run to a threat to push a button. You actually can get to it where you are at that point.
My other question is about the reunification location and primarily, well, I guess let me start with this. So I see the benefit of having, multiple towns that are helping each other, and that sounds nice. I'm just wondering, like, in reality, during the school day, how many resources are really available? Like, what does Kinnelon have to offer? Let's say it was Booton or Butler. Like, what resources
Yeah, we
does
could
Kinnelon
send.
have available? Like, which people are going to go there, and how many buses, and like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we're in the beginning stages of our piece in this. Like,
Okay.
I know Denville was the one who initiated this, I think, in 2019. And since then, a lot of schools have piggybacked on it, and it looks like we're in that realm right now.
Right.
But I would think the easiest part for us to do would be counselors, SAC counselors, case managers who could do some counseling up there, being they don't have a class to supervise. So we could send them up and be a part of that for them. We could also send up computers if they need laptops and so forth. And go from there. But that is yet to be determined. There's just a few ideas.
And the, like as far as I understand needing, shelter and heat and things like that, but like water and resources, like wouldn't it all happen pretty quickly? Like, I mean, people are going to want to get there and get their kids, right?
Yeah, correct. This is again, worst case scenario. So let's just say something happened here at the high school.
Right.
And now the threat has been subdued.
Right.
However you want to put it in your mind, it's fine. And now it's an active crime scene. It's going to have to be investigated from 27 different angles. Right. So now we're going to have to shuttle the kids up there. And depending on how many people we have there to receive the parents, receive the kids, it could be quick. It could be a few hours. Some parents might be coming from New York City or further away if they're on business and so forth. So we don't know how long it'll be, but those are just trying to think of worst case scenarios. And hopefully we don't need it ever. And hopefully we wouldn't, if we get to CCM, we won't have to be there for hours trying to find kids' parents, but we never know.
but it's gonna take longer for them to get there because it's so far away. I mean.
Assuming they're all coming from here, yes.
Yeah, I mean, even if you were gonna get a bus support from Denville or Morris Knolls, they have to drive from there, here,
Correct.
and then back. You know, it's gonna take time. I mean, I just feel like, especially because we're a small town and we have so many friends and community type neighborhoods, somebody would grab my kids. Like, I know that if I couldn't get here in 10 minutes, somebody else would be there. Or, you know, a sibling, a neighbor, my brother happens to live in town, like somebody would be there. And, you know, like, again, I agree with you. I hope it never has to come. I'm heavily concerned over that location, that, I just think the transportation is gonna be a problem, the road's gonna be blocked, the kids are gonna be upset, and like, you're just prolonging the time that they can be united. So.
I don't disagree with you at all. I've looked at a lot of different areas, and again, this I think fits us the best. But if there's an area closer that could give us what we need, I'm all for it. I do know that, you know, you're not going to be coming to the school to pick up your child, so we do got to get them out of here somehow, some way. I imagine they would shut down Kinnelon Road from 23, probably down to Facing Lakes, if not further, and Keel and Ricker and all those roads back this way. So we do have to get them out, and we have to get them out somehow. I do think it's quicker to get buses from other towns here to Acton Randolph than having our buses run circular routes and so forth. But I'm open to suggestions. I did look at a bunch of different areas. I've spoken to many different schools and called different locations, and to see what could work and what wouldn't work. And this is what we came up with. But again, we're going to do a trial run, hopefully in the spring, where we're going to do, you know, maybe 100 or 200 students, get some parents involved. We're going to try it out. If we find out that it's just not what we need and it is too much, we're going to shift gears and try to find a different location. And I'm still open to suggestions today. So if you want to give me some locations that you might think work, I'll gladly speak with them. I'll go and see them, and we'll walk them and see what we can do that might be more beneficial for us and the town and the district itself.
I guess like the priority for me as a mom is like reuniting, right? And I understand that, you know, from a logistics standpoint, you have a lot more to consider. As far as shelter and food and water and resources and you know, people to organize the reunification to make sure that the right kid is going with the right adult. And those things are complicated, and it would take a long time for sure. But I just think the driving 30 minutes is like, oh, it's gonna make people nuts. I mean, I don't know. I know some of you were here when we had that little scare last year, which had nothing to do with New Jersey anyway. But, you know, parents were in the parking lot already to pick up their kids, the PRM kids who walked over to the high school before, like, I even got a call that there was an issue, right? So it happens so fast. And that anxiety and that feeling from the parents of like, I just want my kid, I want to know that they're safe. Now, like, you're waiting for the buses to come. So they're in the school longer in this situation. Then you're driving them a half an hour away. So like, the parents could potentially get there before the kids, you know?
In some cases, yes.
And then you're sitting there waiting and you're like, well, we don't need food and water and shelter because I was here to get my kid right away. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So like, to me, all those other resources are inconsequential to the point that most of the parents are going to figure out, or a neighbor or whoever, how to get there. That's just my, you know, my feeling.
It's a very valid point, and we're all parents here.
Yeah.
We get it. I understand what you're doing, and like you said, I'm looking for holistic.
Yep.
You're looking at individual family, and you have every right to do that, and you should do that. But if you want, we can sit down, we'll throw a map out and we'll look at it and say, what can we use? I even thought about spot 23, if that would work for us.
Yeah.
You know, I know we have other locations we can use for smaller incidents,
Sure.
such as St. Peter's Chapel, you know, Kinnelon Road and OLM and so forth. And we plan to use those if need be, but if the situation were dire, then, you know, this is where we go. But I'd love to sit down with you and figure something else out if there is something better out there. Yes.
So just speaking from my own experiences in doing this with school districts, because I have 2 school districts in the town I'm responsible for. So when it comes to the MOUs between law enforcement and the schools, where's the police department, the police chief representation? Because I may have an opinion, right, but I work in a different county, right? And my problems, and even in my wife's district, they're not, it's not Kinnelon. But I would defer to the experts in this field when it comes to school security in Kinnelon. And that would be obviously.
Right. We work closely with KPD. I know all the guys pretty closely. I got all the numbers on my phone. I spoke with Chief today about this because he's received some calls about the reunification, and he threw out some areas. And I said, Chief, we've already looked at these. Here's the reason why we don't think they fit in. He goes, okay, that's fine. He goes, this is still a work in progress. We're going to go with what you have for now, and if we can find somewhere better, he goes,
So
we can
this
shift
isn't
gears.
set in stone?
No, this is a year-by-year thing. The MOA is only for 1 year through the end of the school year. And we can always use it as a secondary option. If we find something better, we can keep it in the back burner just in case and still use a new primary one if we have to.
But the local police department was consulted, and they agreed and signed off that this was the best for the district, for the community, for our parents, for safety, for security.
I haven't seen the MOA myself personally, but I believe they have. The board voted on it. I'm not sure whether it's been turned into CCM at this point yet or not.
Yeah, but like the MOU that the superintendent's gonna sign with the police chief once a year.
Mhm.
As a section.
That's not happening.
What's that?
MOUs are not happening.
MOU from the Attorney General from 2019. There's no MOUs on
But
file.
that's what we have.
Yes.
Anything revised, nobody has anything just yet.
Okay.
So we're waiting.
There's currently an agreement between the school and the police department in the old
Yes.
MOU. Okay. So part of that is that these plans are supposed to be collaborative. They're supposed to include emergency planners, fire department, OEM, law enforcement, and then collectively you put something into place, right? It's my understanding that didn't happen. And I'm just here to advocate on the behalf of, looking from the other side of public safety to please speak to the people that do that. And then come to this, parents association, and say, look, unified front, we all agree that this is the best for X, Y, Z, and, all of those things. So that's kind of what I'm.
That makes sense.
Here as a parent.
Right. And we've all known our reunification process has needed work, and so we did run with it. Obviously this committee I'm forming and so forth will have KPD on it, and we can go from there. But I do appreciate your point that everybody involved, all stakeholders should have a voice. I do agree with you.
Well, it's because your plan is written on paper. When the bullets fly, right? You're going to be locked down. Are you going to be running around in the,
No, I'm locking down.
No school faculty will be. So it's really a law enforcement operation at that point.
Mhm.
And no one's really going to move unless law enforcement says, because there might be victims, there might be witnesses that we sequester. So it's really a law enforcement operation at that point. So that's where you can rehearse it all you want, and you can come up with, the best laid plan is only good until you get punched in the face, is what I said from the Marine Corps, but something similar to that.
Well, they said that at the CCM meeting as well. They said the same exact quote.
And that theme kind of reverberates in emergency preparedness. It looks great on paper.
Right.
But until really the community stakeholders, and I'm a big advocate, obviously, from the law enforcement side, but until the school, law enforcement, all agree that this is the best plan, I'm just kind of going to listen and see what everybody else has to say.
Got it. Thank you. Any questions online, Jay? Any other questions? Any other points?
That was a nice presentation. I
Good job.
appreciate all the time. Yeah, really. It was very
I'll pay you
clear.
later. Don't worry.
That was very clear.
Thank you, everybody, for coming out. I appreciate it. And again, feel free to email me if you could be a part of that committee. The more people, the better. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.